Cheat on me? I'll come for everyone.
You all wanted revenge. So here it is. Stay till the end and find out why. This episode is emotionally disturbing to cheaters.
After being asked by many people why this wasn't posted to Nuclear or Pro Revenge, I have decided to try again. Moderators at Pro explained why it didn't qualify and suggested Nuclear, but it never posted after my submission. I think maybe it was because my account was only days old, so fingers crossed it works this time. I met my ex in 2012, right after I had just turned 30. I'd only dated and been with women exclusively, until I came out as being into both sides at 28. Let's just say the year I was 29. I mostly had casual hookups, safe, and I did try dating 2 times for a few weeks, but it just never worked out or got serious. I kind of figured that I'd probably end up marrying a woman or not getting married at all, because I just didn't see myself catching romantic feelings for a guy. Then, I met Ryan. From the first date, it was just like the only other time in my life I had fallen in love. Butterflies, constantly thinking about him, wanting to spend every moment with him. He fell hard for me too, and we became an item, though he did say, while he considered my double orientation a positive, because he had a thing for straight guys, it also gave him doubts, because it raised a concern with him, that it may lead me astray and cheat on him. I thought about it and took his worrying serious, but assured him that I couldn't even think about anyone else, because I really was into him. Between us, I knew he was the one by the end of the first month, and I was in love. But I wasn't going to say these things too soon and risk scaring him off. On our first date, he admitted to me that he was legally blind, due to a genetic disorder, and that it was progressive, and eventually he would only have a sliver of his peripheral vision. He immediately said he understood if I didn't want to see him again, because no other guy had wanted to date him and be his driver all the time. I grew up with a brother in a wheelchair who never learned how to walk or talk due to misdiagnosed meningitis at 6 months old back in the 70s. I told him that and said that what my brother had was a severe disability. So in my perspective, his blindness had no effect on my feelings, and that always being his driver was a small sacrifice, just to be with him. The following years were pure bliss. We brought out the best in each other. My family, who was surprised but very supportive when I came out, adored Ryan and treated him like family, and said that I acted happier since we'd been together. When I met him, he was working part-time in retail and had done very poorly in high school because he lost a lot of his confidence as his vision deteriorated. I told him that one thing I did insist on was that he do something with his life because he had too much to offer and that I would help. He said that he'd wanted to be a teacher but didn't think someone with limited vision could teach. Nonsense. So I put him through community college for 2 years, then 2.5 years of a local university, and finally the 1-year teacher certification program, as required by California. I drove countless miles and paid hundreds in public transportation costs for him, never blinking an eye or complaining. We'd been together for 7.5 years and were engaged to be married in October by the time he was in his last semester of his teaching certification, which involved him student teaching at his former high school with his favorite teacher from his days in school. Then the pandemic hit and schools closed. Fortunately, he'd had enough hours in the classroom that he would still qualify to be certified, after the governor issued a waiver via executive order. On the 3rd day of the stay-at-home order in March, my life crumbled when I innocently found out he had cheated on me with an ex-lover, all because he handed his phone to me to show me something on Instagram. I accidentally fat-thumbed the back arrow when he gave it to me, taking me back to a list of all his messages. I looked and recognized the name of his ex as the second message, dated a week ago. I clicked on it and my heart sank. Directions to my house, pictures, dirty talk, and reassuring him not to worry about me because he had my location on my Find My Friends, just in case I came home from work. I immediately started screaming, demanding to know everything, and he admitted to having his ex over twice. Use your imagination, but exclude the protection. His ex was engaged to his girlfriend during this, adding another victim. Then, he also admitted to an affair with his straight but curious and recently divorced cousin. Again, no protection twice. On top of that, he finally admitted to being intimate with a supposedly straight guy he and many of my cousins went to school with. I told Ryan I really didn't like him or want them talking because I didn't trust him after what I'd read about this guy. Since they were never close friends, I didn't feel like this was a big sacrifice or that I was being too controlling, and I assumed that he knew why I felt that way, but didn't bother repeating my concerns. The reason was, after high school at age 20, this guy was convicted of acts that can't be mentioned here and had gone to jail and required to register as an offender for life. Apparently, Ryan was the only person in his graduating class that hadn't heard that news. All of this happened in my home, while I was working. We spent the whole weekend crying, with me asking over and over why and him repeatedly crying and saying he just didn't know and that he felt terrible. Monday comes around and anger started being as common as sadness. And I made a comment that said I was going to pull all the phone records, going back the 3 years that AT&T kept them. Only when he heard that did he admit to one more guy, some random named Frankie off the hookup app Grindr, who was the first guy he cheated on me with and continued to casually hook up with for nearly 2 years, with the last time being in February, the month before. He told me how it started. Get this, it was the day after his graduation with his BA in May 2018, and he was drunk from celebrating and just wanted to have some. I too had been celebrating with him and was too drunk and passed out asleep on the couch. Apparently he called it the Angry Hots and chatted with this Frankie fellow, then arranged to go to his car in a church parking lot across the street from our condo, which happens to be across the street from a school too. This fact is important later. All the while, I slept on the couch. All the times they hooked up after that was in my condo again, while I was working or visiting a friend for the night up the coast. He used to love going, but started saying he couldn't occasionally because of homework and studying. I absolutely lost it, told him to get in the car, and I drove him to his family's house so he could tell them what he did, so they understood why he was moving back into their house. While he was in the house, I was in the driveway on the phone with AT&T ordering the 3 years' worth of detailed calls and text logs, then made an appointment to be screened for STIs. I suspended his service so he could figure out how to pay for his own damn phone. Then I temporarily changed all his passwords on the social media accounts he used to cheat with, and to make sure he couldn't hide any evidence, so only I would have access to his cloud. To think that time we shared each other's passwords on his suggestion years before would come back to bite him. I also called the bank and issued a stop payment on his final tuition check that I had sent to the certification program the week before and hadn't hit the bank yet. Before deleting his social media, except Facebook, I took screenshots of the entire Instagram conversation with his ex and mailed the conversation to his fiancé, who deserved to know, so she could see a doctor and get tested too. His family was very religious and had kicked him out in high school for 3 days when he tried to come out, and only took him back in when he took his words back and to never mention it again. Needless to say, she ended it. He got kicked out. One down. He came back out to the car and we went home. I took his house key and told him to say goodbye to our 3 pets and get packing. The entire time he packed. I studied the phone records to find out dates, times, and if there was anyone else he was leaving out. He answered every question I asked, and it was then that I discovered that the criminal perf and he only did the lollipop stuff in my home, if you know what I'm saying, and that the actual full-blown monkey business was in the same parking lot he was in with the random Frankie guy. The wheels started turning, and the next day I walked over to the church and, sure enough, spotted a camera. I spoke to a secretary, sweet old lady, at the church and informed them about a registered offender being active in their lot, and that not only was it a violation of his parole for indecent exposure, but that he was not allowed to be that close to a school. They were shook and wanted to help, so I provided the date. I was in luck. They had a digital 2-year loop system that started deleting day by day after it had been retained for 2 years. Here's the juicy part. He first cheated with Frankie in May 2018, and the perv offender started in April 2019. I told them I was filing a report with the authorities and that probation would require a copy of it eventually. They said they would save the file and allowed me a thumb drive of both days to submit with my report. Within a month, the criminal was locked up again. 2 down. I also filed a report against the Frankie guy. The police said it was a relatively minor infraction, but since it was across from a school playground and skate park, they would follow up. They added there would be no jail time possible, though. Next, I researched the hell out of Frankie and called him to confront him. He was smug and admitted to knowing about me the whole time. What he didn't know is that I had found out he had a job that required a security clearance, and he had several judgments against him. And collection agencies had been looking for him. Best dollars I ever spent on a data collection site. I didn't know why they couldn't find him and just garnish his wages. But I found out he's Hispanic, had 2 last names, and was a junior of his dad's last name. Plus, he frequently went by his middle name Francisco, Frankie for short. So I think he got lost in the paperwork confusion. I sent a destructive letter to the collection agencies, providing his employer and current location and contact info, and then sent a copy of the report about the misdemeanor indecent exposure, for which he pled guilty, by the way, and was fined with degrading community service. His wages did get garnished, but only for 2 paychecks because the misdemeanor was enough for him to lose his security clearance and get fired. 3 down. Then I contacted Ryan's family on his mother's side, pretending to be him from his Facebook account, making sure they knew he had jumped on his cousin. It spread through the family like wildfire, and soon his curious cousin was contacting me, because he couldn't get a hold of Ryan to ask why he would expose what they did. I just laughed and said, you shouldn't hop on your cousins, especially when they're engaged, and that he'd messed around in my house, so now it was my turn for payback. 4 down. Lastly, I had already stopped payments, but since he was so close to finishing, I was sure his family would bail him out and pay the university. Like I said, the misdemeanor charge is usually only a slap on the wrist. However, I remembered some of the paperwork he signed to be a mandated reporter, which means that you could lose your teaching certification for documented acts of moral turpitude. I sent a copy of both reports from the parking lot, with still shots from the security footage clearly showing Ryan's face, to the school district he'd been student teaching in, and a copy to the Commission on Teacher Credentials. 5th and final, down. Admittedly, I did all this out of anger, but he shattered my sense of self-worth and made me incredibly bitter and untrusting after years of being generous and supporting him. Everywhere I went and looked in town, I was confronted with the thoughts of Ryan and his cheating. I felt a terrible energy in my condo knowing it all happened there. I stayed there for 9 months and watched all 5 of their lives self-destruct, then sold my condo, making a nice profit, and relocated to the PNW to start over. One thing that is truly sad is, I found out just recently that his ex, the ex whose fiancé broke up with him, ended up self-deleting several months after I moved. It is too bad that his family was so closed-minded to turn on their own son, but in the end, it's not my fault that he cheated on his fiancée. By coming into my home at my fiancé's invitation to cheat. What he ended up doing is never the answer to one's problems, and I hope the fiancé he cheated on doesn't blame herself, and that only his family does, as they should.
That was so horribly sad, then so calculated and savage. Bro did the math. Nobody deserves to be betrayed and cheated on. And damn, did you make sure he learned that lesson. This went nuclear for sure.
When I read stories on nuclear revenge, I often do so to feel secondhand glee at the bad guy getting his comeuppance, something that doesn't happen often in real life. Let's be honest, people often get away with their horrible actions. Yet, reading this did not evoke the same emotions within me. Honestly, it's very sad. Yes, the fiancé got what he deserved, but OP will likely never invest as sincerely and as honestly, and as unconditionally, in any future relationship as he did in this one. What OP did for another person out of love was a very precious thing. So many people would do anything to have that kind of honest love directed at them, and it is utterly tragic that OP would likely never give of himself again to anyone after this.
You know, I definitely agree with this, but at the same time it's obvious that OP puts his all into everything, whether it be building someone up or tearing them down. So I'm going to choose to be hopeful, that when he finds love again, he'll once again go all in.
Thank you for that. You are correct that I have not been able to fully trust, thus fully invest in someone the same way again. I finally decided to make an investment and scheduled 6 sessions of specialized therapy for treating PTSD upon the recommendation of several professionals that have been shocked at the success rate. I hope it works, because I miss the person I used to be.
I had to think of the following scene unfolding as you told your story. No son, the man you cheated on, was John Wick. I once saw him end 3 careers and relationships with an effing pencil.
Fatality.
Your writing style, the flow, the revenge. You are a master. This was beautiful, no notes. Bravo, good sir. And may I say, what an absolutely amazing and incredible takedown. Right now, I am putting my phone down and giving you a standing ovation. I'm sorry you had to deal with that, but you are brilliant and deserve everything good coming your way.
I have to say I'm impressed with the methodological, concise, succinct, analytical strategy. I don't believe the naysayers saying, "You ruined their lives," because I think they are short-sighted. If everyone was allowed their secretive, unprotected affairs, they would no doubt gain confidence and continue unfettered, possibly spreading disease. They now have a chance to alter their behavior and better themselves earlier in life. The man who chose to delete would have gone on to marry and have children only to choose the same outcome later, after the secret is revealed, leaving them fatherless, which would be worse.
Thank you. I agree. I ended up becoming acquaintances with the fiancé of the ex, and she did indeed say that they had talked about having a family as soon as they got married. Luckily, she didn't blame herself either, after confronting him at his home in front of his parents. Last I spoke to her was over 2 years ago, and she was dating another man and seemed happy. She thanked me for helping her dodge a huge bullet and said, looking back, there were a couple things that might have clued her in if she had just dug a little more. But she, like me, wasn't the suspicious type and took whatever explanation was given at face value. It ends up there was another guy that he went to high school with, who he had been hooking up with prior and during his time with Ryan while we were together.
Good on you, OP. Your revenge was wicked and my heart hurts for you. Yet, I'm smiling at the justice. Kinda curious. How is your ex-fiancé doing now?
I honestly don't know today. The last update I have was over a year ago because I don't check up and I asked my family to stop sharing gossip and updates. He was still living with his parents, single and working in retail, but that could have changed by now. I hope he sought treatment for his addiction he got diagnosed with, along with some childhood trauma, and maybe even for the so-called angry hots.
Before we conclude this story, it came to my attention that there are many YouTubers that re-upload my content by simply putting another background into their episode. If you hear this audio anywhere else than on Royal A.I, it means they stole it. Be sure to watch Royal A.I if you like this type of content. That brings us to the end of this story. OP offered emotional and financial support only to be cheated on, igniting the vengeful brainwaves to leave nothing but scorched earth on everyone involved. The cheater lost his career before it even started. One affair partner lost his job and had bill collectors hunting him down. Another lost his fiancé and was kicked to the curb. The third humiliated when his entire family found out he was having shenanigans with his actual cousin. But the fourth was put in jail for violating probation. If OP taught us anything, it's the following: don't cheat and deceive, or F around and find out. What would you advise OP? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to smack the like button, and if you have a story you're willing to share, email it to contactroyalai@gmail.com. See you in the next one.